I don't know if you ever saw this. It was like it even made into a short documentary on WWE.com. Bret Hart versus Tom Magee. Do you remember the match, the tryout match that Tom Magee had?
No, I
And
was
you
up in
remember Tom?
Rochester. I read about it. I read about it. I knew Tom McGee, I think, from Roy Shire's territory or maybe L.A. He was a big guy, maybe 6'5", 6'6", right around 300 pounds, but just chiseled, Um, not thick like Hulk, maybe taller than Hulk, more sculpted. He'd start off the match. He'd stand on the top turnbuckle and do a backflip into the middle of the ring. And that was pretty much the beginning, middle, and end of his match. He wasn't a bad guy, he was a good guy. I knew him and talked to him. He was like a semi-celebrity around Gold's Gym in Venice and stuff like that. He was into powerlifting. He was into bodybuilding. He was a pseudo wrestler. I never saw the match with he and Bret, which is understandably that Bret could hold him down and get him into. Bret was probably was he a part of the tag team? Were they
No,
a tag team?
no, it was a singles match, just Bret versus Tom. And
No, I know, but was he in the tag team?
I don't think so. Tom was always a
Were he
single.
and Jim Heels already, or is he was still?
Well, I'm not even sure he ever made it onto TV. Pretty much, I know he went to Stampede, and I think he may have gone to Japan at some point as well. But apparently, he
Tom
never.
McGee?
Yeah, Tom Magee. He never had a good match after the Bret one, and he did it for years, and he could never wrap his head around
He
wrestling.
could work, but he was awkward. You couldn't put him in play. Hulk as big as they are, or Stan Hansen and some of these guys, Mulligan as big as they are, they move from spot to spot, seeming effortlessly, and they're able to, and there was no smooth flow, and there was no, he didn't really have it mentally, to get over. And I don't think he could get it because he was pretty egotistical, pretty sold on himself. And he was a talented guy. And movie star type, movie star wannabe, could be, should have be guy. He's a 6'6", 300, etched, good looking, long hair, acrobatic, but it just, and all those things, but they just never kind of meshed into one piece where he could go in the ring and get, you get sympathy on him, or he could get heat on you. He'd beat the hell out of you, but he wouldn't care. Because he should be. He's so, you can't see him as a heel begging off, and being afraid of somebody, and as a baby face, and his selling lacked the empathy, the believability that he could never let himself go that far to really believe that he's hurt or believe he's and Bret Hart's not going to hurt. This guy's not going to hurt this guy. He's too big and too strong. So it was Bret's psychology and Bret's timing and not rushing through. I'm sure other guys could have had matches with him, but maybe they might have been in time restraints, because that territory was full of great workers. Bret was one of them, but everybody else, throw him in there with Bob Orton, throw him in there with Adonis, throw him in there with. Well, Piper's a little stylish, but Piper would have a whole production, to work around Piper, to work around his strengths and stuff. A match with Hulk, it wouldn't happen. DiBiase, somebody like that could work with him. I could work with him, and have a Fuji. Fuji was a hell of a worker before he became manager, and even as manager, he was a hell of a worker. And people, then you talk about cliques. He was a big part of that clique. You want to call it a clique. He was in Vince's office from Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. because he had the tag belts with Tanaka. Everybody, he played a lot of. In fact, he was the one I gave him. I was watching the Road Warriors on Atlanta TV. I said, "Hey, fool, you seen?" No, no, no. I said, people, they're ready. These guys, you can have a knockoff of these guys anywhere. They, people are just, they're just going. You can throw, make up a name. So that's where
Demolition.
Bill Eadie and Demolition came from. I said, well, I said, yeah. I said, the people are buying that all that Mad Max stuff and everything else. I said, these guys are over, and they're so over that there's spillover, that there's room for somebody else to get over using their gimmick. And it was that simple. It was just in vogue at time. And he brought it to Vince, and Vince brought it to himself, and then it was a good idea Vince had.
I'll bring you back to Tom Magee just slightly. So, someone who's 6'5", enormous body. I've heard this said once before, and I can't remember who said it. Looking like that, you're either going to be in the main event, like Batista, or you're going to be in the opening match, like Rick Drayson was for how many years, if you remember that name from the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no in between.
Yeah, I knew him well. Just, too in love with their bodies, I guess, too in love with themselves to be able to be, to put yourself out there, as because when you're out there selling, you're another failure. You're just portraying yourself as a complete boob, So, and when you're doing that, so that I don't think as diet and scientific and everything else, those guys, maybe they just couldn't turn the corner and get that light just didn't go on in their head, where they could sell and to make your opponent, you're made, you look great, you're fantastic. Let's see, let's have you, go against somebody that, that you can make that's a worthy, let's make it a worthy match out of this. Don't go in there, and, try to give me 20 minutes of how good you are. I don't know.
I'll tell you what then, I will move on. In fact, I'm going to move on over several different questions. I was going to ask you about Owen Hart and stuff. We'll save that for an Ask Muraco Anything, which there is going to be one next week as well. Or, in like 30 minutes when I start asking you stuff for the next episode. But I'll save the Owen Hart stuff for another day. I will ask you, Bret Hart keeps mentioning his love of drawing cartoons. Did he ever draw a cartoon of you? And do you remember when he used to draw cartoons on the blackboard? Any memorable ones of those?
Yeah. He might have been some of me or some of the other boys, but he mostly picked on Strongbow. It might have been somebody had was a flavor of the month or something that he would draw a cartoon of. But usually Strongbow with the stomach and naked and the hanging out and the droop feather, and always that's the character I remember most, and Vince or whoever else happened to be it, but he would get Strongbow every time.
Did Angel feature in any of these blackboard drawings as well?
He could have been.